Good day, everybody. Wolf Driver once again coming to you live on our VODcast, podcast, live broadcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm here now, so it's a great time to post your comments, ask questions, concerns, shout outs, whatever you'd like to hear or see from me. In case you don't know me, I always preface the show by saying I'm the Wolf Driver. I call myself the Wolf Driver because I'm driving a team of Huskies, basically. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years. So when a professional musher, I'm not professional, I'm doing this recreationally, but when a professional musher drives a big dog team, they call him a dog driver. I mean, that's the professional term for it. So because I'm doing this in unconventional ways, it doesn't mean they're not safe. They're very safe. They're overly safe, for lack of a better description there too. I'll explain that in a bit. But because it's not something probably nobody else is doing exactly what I'm doing, I can say, anywhere else, because a lot of this equipment I've developed by myself or with my team, etc. So I'm the only one that's doing it in the capacity that I am. There are other people that do similar in some ways, but I've taken it to the next level because I've been doing it so long, and I've found all the I guess expertise, if you will, because of all the Huskies I've had and all the time I put into this. Again, not on a professional level. I've done a professional dog sled. I've mushed up in the Canadian Rockies in Banff, Canada. I think it was a team of 9 dogs. So, I mean, I'm very familiar with it. And I've done a lot. You'll see a lot of my videos now. If we get the occasional snowstorm, that's all we got in the past few years. I don't pull out the dog sled, though I have one. I've done that for many years also with my first generation of Huskies. So this is totally different in the sense that I've developed now. I'm doing it. This has a real name for it. It's called dryland mushing. And people that do that on a more professional level are running dogs on basically what they call a tow line or a center line. That is where they hook the dogs just like you see on a dog sled. And usually they do it with fewer dogs because it's hard to be a full-time musher and really maintain as many dogs that they have that you would normally do on a larger dog team. So when people today have Huskies or working breeds, high energy breeds like Huskies, especially pulling breeds like that, they're going to have a handful sometimes at the most. And what that means is they're not going to power a full sled like that. It's really hard to. When you get into snow, there's so many different variables, from day to day even, because of the weather, the temperatures, the conditions, etc. And some people that run larger teams will actually groom, or they'll live in a community where they groom the trails to make them more fit for dog sledding, for mushing. But when you get into more populous areas today where people have less dogs, they're going to make their own tracks sometimes, or they're going to go to trails where the track's already made, etc., where people are using the trail for other purposes. But again, from day to day, that can all change because snow melts. It's all predicated upon temperatures, and then it refreezes, so it can create ice. It can be how the snow falls, depending on, I guess, atmospheric temperatures, et cetera, conditions. It can come down in powdery form, whatever the case may be. So you may think it's one way at your house, and then you get to a trail, and it's totally different. So the situation, though, is with fewer dogs, it's really hard to propel the sled. So usually the less dogs you have, the more the musher's working. And for people like myself, getting a little older here, it's harder to be as physical. So doing these wheeled kind of, again, what they call dryland mushing is a lot easier in the sense that you're not dealing with snow. So the wheels are going to roll more freely. And once the wheels start rolling, it's really just about the dogs going with the bike or with the rig that you're driving. Keep in mind, though, when you change that to dirt and grass, you're dealing with conditions also. And that takes me to the next point, why I developed Dog Motorsports, because it's electric. So where a bike rider, that what they call, again, dryland mushing or urban mushing, where the dogs are on a tow rope, there's only a few of them, they're out in front, they're pulling the bike. That would be the reason for using they can propel it using the pedals. But on some of my rigs now, there's no pedals because I'm not going to propel it. I'm just going to use the motor because it's more reliable, quite frankly. Again, when you're getting a little older, when you're getting knees, backs, and other issues, even people that maybe have disabilities can do what I'm doing. So this whole dog motorsports aspect opens up the door for people of pretty much almost all physical shapes or physicalities to be able to have high energy breeds and to give the dogs what they need. So that's where dog motorsports comes into this. So I want to show you the video that's playing is because I usually like to play a video here that is relevant to what we're talking about. So here I am on what I call my Easy Raider mush board, but it's really an Easy Raider kind of utility scooter, if you will. They were developed actually for the military, this particular one. So what looks like a scooter is actually pretty much a single track ATV. And this is from last Friday. That's how recent this is. And this was a video that went semi-viral, I would say. It's still getting a lot of views. And because as my videos reach more people, and I'm sure this is true with all videos, you get, of course, more eyeballs on them. So you're going to get more and more comments. And a lot of those comments and a lot of the people viewing it are just not as well-versed on what you're doing. And that's the cool thing about social media, because you can see things you didn't even know were possibilities. They're just what somebody thinking, how they doing this, what's going on. So I get a lot of people that bump into my video posts sometimes, my reels, depending on where you're watching this, TikTok, whatever. And they're like, what is this guy doing? And if you look at it from somebody else's perspective that has no idea about working dogs, about huskies, about sled dogs, a lot of people just hear stories. Oh, sled dogs are treated so cruelly, or they have to pull all these people around, or this equipment around, whatever, and they really just don't know. And that's what I call misinformation. And unfortunately, it really tarnishes sled dogs, because people talk about how cruel what they think they see is, and when they don't know, the dogs really need this and crave this, because we might have evolved as humans, but a lot of dogs still have their working ethics in them, and they need to do some breed specific exercises. The thing about dog motorsports, about Wolf Driver, what I do is we can do these exercises in ways that are not that almost anybody can do. They're not relying on having to be a full-time musher and live in an area where it's constantly cold and have access to lots of land, have lots of dogs, etc. So what I'm doing in this video, and this is that single track ATV I'm talking about, I'm using, I've been trying, and again, I'm always evolving what I'm doing, and I'm always looking for a better rig for the dogs to be on, looking for the maximum enjoyment for them, and looking for, quite frankly, the easiest ways for me to do it so I can keep doing it as I get older and older. So this single track ATV, I went and I tried to find, because it's so capable. And the dogs, a lot of people have said this before, but I kind of coined the phrase, I believe, that the dogs are the ultimate ATV, because they can really go through any conditions. And if they're out on their own, if they weren't actually tethered to anything, I mean, they could climb probably Mount Everest. They could climb any grade. They could survive pretty well. But when you I went ahead with that same thought in mind, because you got to keep challenging these dogs, and the more variety you can give them with familiar exercise, the more enriching it is to them. We call it psychological enrichment. So that's the deal. If you go to the same trail every day or every other day or whenever you run them, it's still wonderful, believe me. Just getting them out there to do something, they will be pumped up. But when you change the location, when you change the way they're tethered to it, when you change a lot of the variables that are pretty well you can change somewhat easily. I mean, there's different trails usually in most areas we live, but I'm to the extreme. So I'll change the trail by traveling the East Coast of the USA to totally find a different trail. Now that's definitely for the Huskies, but it's also for us. We want to adventure. And when I say we, my team, myself, I'm doing this all, and I've got a team with me. But to adventure and see these different areas, and for the dogs to pick up on scents of different animals that are indigenous to that reason, doing it whether it's in the mountains or the valley or on water's edge on the beach, it's always something different. And imagine all the different workouts that they're getting to. I call it like mush CrossFit, because they're going in sand, which is totally different stepping than when they're on a hard surface. I'll address hard surfaces in a second. And then when you're tall grasses causes them to high step. Then when you get into, depending on the dog and what you're training for, putting on resistance harnesses, changing the location of where the tether point is on a particular vehicle. I mean, it sounds easy, but it adds a totally different dimension to the dog's experience. So it makes the challenge really that much more. And what we're doing is we're making the dog less injury prone by giving them all this exposure to these different ways of doing, again, really breed-specific exercise, what's been bred in them. So besides making them less injury prone, it's going to condition their whole entire body in areas that you didn't know, or that they didn't know they had, basically. Like when you get to the gym and between doing a bicep curl and then a tricep lift, you're like, wait a minute, there's something behind that bicep. It's called a tricep. So, and that's what I'm saying. And even just I talked about the texture here with the asphalt, grasses. You can get tall grasses. I go to farms with the dogs that are high stepping. You can get to almost rock roads, for lack of a better description, or like some of these farm roads. Some of the mountain roads we go on are really rock. They're not quite as small as what I would call gravel or crushed limestone, which is a familiar surface on trails, on bike trails, rail trails, etc. But almost like a stone, couple inches in diameter or in shape, whatever, that the dogs can actually grip as they climb or as they mush, as they're walking, whatever the case may be, whatever exercise you're doing. And that's totally great exercise for their paw, if you think about it, for their toes and how they grip around the rocks. So a lot of people will see me on different surfaces. I'll be like, oh my God, is that okay for the dogs? What about the dogs? And conditioned properly, that it's fine for them. Of course, we always have to monitor them. You could be wearing shoes and twist your ankle. And quite frankly, I have a problem sometimes with the dogs wearing booties. I think it's a necessary evil at some times. And for some dogs, it may be a necessary evil all the time. But it makes their stepping different. They can't grip at all. And I've had dogs actually slip in them. So my theory, and how I've had the most success, again, almost 30 years, is to give them the most diversified exposure to lots of different terrains, and not just one time here, one time there, consistent exposure like that, so they can thoroughly develop those muscles and also their pads and their paws, because on their pads they can get healthy callus. But if you lay off of surfaces that'll help develop that and maintain it, like asphalt, if you don't do it enough, it's going to be inconsistent, and therefore that's when you can be more subject to blistering and other pad issues. But if you're consistent about it, consistency is important without overdoing it, in moderation. And a lot of factors have to be taken into consideration. How much weight load, if they're pulling, what kind of speed you're doing, what kind of distances you're doing, and temperature conditions, especially for asphalt. But all surfaces, you have to consider that. Even snow. Now, a lot of mushers, they're doing long distances a lot of times that are in snow. And some dogs, like I said, surfaces are more, to me, booties are more dog dependent than surface dependent. And what I mean by that is whatever dogs you're running, you might have an older dog that needs the booties, a younger dog because they lift their paw up higher that doesn't. But also when you get into snow, dogs sometimes have hair between their toes, their paw pads, and that can, if they have hair, it can usually create a snowballing effect, which is like when they're running in the snow. Again, distance, condition of the snow, from temperatures, etc. And as that piles up in there, it makes a snowball. Basically, it keeps going. Take a snow and roll it in the, like almost like a avalanche. You keep rolling that snowball, it gets bigger and bigger. So it gets bigger and bigger on their pad because they're providing the momentum or the drive. And as it builds up between their paws, it can become like a club. I mean, like a serious. I mean, it can engulf their whole paw basically, and develop this big snowball, and that can be really serious condition. So there's a couple ways to combat that. You can use a non-toxic wax that you would coat in there, so the snow would fall off; it wouldn't be able to accumulate in there, and you have to keep reapplying that though because it does wear off. You can use a booty. A lot of mushers do that. In the snow, it's to me more appropriate than on a lot of the other surfaces we run, again, depending on the dog. And you can also, some people will take, for the dogs that have the hair, because they're more likely to this effect, at least I find that, the snowballing effect, you can actually shave it or just between their toes. I'm not talking about the whole pad. But we do have to, some dogs will grow hair so much that it'll take over, it'll be so long it'll get under their paw pads. When it does that, that becomes a hindrance too. So we do have to cut that and make sure. And routine grooming, they should take care of that because they could slip on it in the house. It can become a hazard for them outside. Again, that's when the hair grows over totally the pad. Just, it doesn't mean they have hair between their toes like I'm addressing about the snowballing situation. It just means they have a lot of hair. My huskies, people say, well, why they look different? Because their hair is so full. They're woolly, so that means they're long hair. All huskies are double coated. They're long hair double coated, which means their paw pads, their hair, and their even just on the bottom of their paws might become so long that it reaches below. I've had this happen below their paws, and it would have to be addressed in that way. So we're here, and I deviated there. I apologize. We've got. I found a kind of like a directory of the 10 highest or steepest bike climbs in each state, at least the states around where I am: Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia. I haven't done New Jersey, et cetera, but I've been compiling this list from another list I found on the internet, which seems like a reputable source. And we did our first one, and that's what the video on the screen is showing last Friday. And since I'm in Maryland, today I'm in Pennsylvania, that's where the studio that I broadcast from is. But when I'm in Maryland, that's where I live. That's our home base, where the Huskies are, where we travel from, etc. So since this was kind of unknown territory, scoping out the 10 highest grades that somebody could bike. Again, we're not biking per se. I'm using an electric, what looks like an ATV. It's a hybrid between an ATV and a bike. And climb these. Let the Huskies climb them. Now, they wouldn't be pulling me because they can't pull that kind of weight with me on it, on that ATV, because that 4 dogs can't pull that, because that ATV by itself weighs close to 500 pounds, I believe, all in with the gear, and with me a couple 100 pounds more easy. So 4 dogs can comfortably pull 4 50-pound Huskies, which they are, relatively speaking, about 600 pounds. So, but that's on level ground. When you start adding grades to it, especially grades like we're talking here, I think my meter at one point, because I take a meter with me too, read like an 18.3% grade, which is pretty intense. I think the largest grade that you could bike or climb or something in the world, when I was looking at it, is close to something like 35% in Australia. I might be a little off there, but 18.3 is severe. I definitely couldn't walk it, not at this age in my life, maybe when I was younger. But I wanted to see, because I've run the dogs on plenty of mountain roads, and grades there have gone pretty high too. They're not theoretically, or they weren't mentioned in this ranking that I mentioned of the 10 steepest ones in each state, but I'm sure they can contend with this. But I wanted to go just see what people claim are the steepest grades and see the dog's performance level on them. If you'll notice, I've got my van behind me. I've got a point man that rides in front of me, and my van pulls off and follows me to help me stay safe on the road. Now, I'm not taking over the road. I know people will complain, well, Wolf Driver, you think you own that road. I mean, I get so many complaints that you it would make your head spin. But I put myself out there, so I'm okay with it. But I would never. I'm probably one of the most respectful people you'll ever meet, or at least virtually meet, as we are here. And I don't want to impede anybody's way. I mean, I know people got to get to work. People have children. They got to get to daycare. They got to get to, sometimes, God forbid, to hospitals, etc. So I'm not blocking the roadway here. I will only go to roadways that are for bikes, that people can bike on, and this is a bike challenge. So people can bike on it. As soon as somebody is behind us, my wingman, I call him, following me in my van, will let me know, and we pull right over. And that's why we have walkie-talkies. So we go on this road, which is called Coxey Brown Road. Again, it's in Frederick, Maryland. And it's only a 1.8 mile climb, and it's not a particularly busy road. I mean, it is a double yellow line, but that doesn't mean it's going to be super busy. We watched the traffic pattern before we got on there, try to find the best time of day to do this in between rush hour, morning rush hour, and evening rush hour. There are some houses on there, so it's not like, again, it's a major highway or anything. So what we did was we did the 1.8 miles. We actually did it quicker than I thought. You might worry, like if you get on this and do it with an electric bike, a lot of times, a lot of bikes would have a tough time, even though electric is real torquey. So they've got a lot of drive, if you will, a lot of power, especially off the line. But when you give it this kind of incline, a lot of bikes wouldn't make it up there. So that's what's so great about the single track ATV I'm using. It makes it up there no problem. And in fact, we were impressed with how good it did and how good the dogs did. Now, the dogs control their pace. Again, they're not pulling. So someone came on here and said, well, the asphalt surface is causing the black and white, the more traditional husky, to hang back some. I mean, I love people, and that person had a little more experience because at least they had mentioned their sled dog background. But, you don't make an evaluation like that. It's very hard to give someone advice. I've been doing this for years. I know how my dogs are reacting, if something's unusual, if they have issues, etc. I do always appreciate any kind of comment, so I can either help set the record straight so others reading it can understand, as well as maybe I can learn something. I'm not saying I know it all. I'm not a professional musher. There's people that do what I'm doing in snow, like I said, professional mushers that are in areas where they have constant snow and run in large teams, and they've done it for years. They know a lot. They don't know exactly what I'm doing, and I don't know exactly more about what they're doing, of course, but we share a common interest, and it's a lot of similarities there between the dogs and everything else. And again, a lot of people aren't using just huskies. They're crossing sled dogs with many different breeds to get the best aspects of all. I'm using just huskies here, or I should say my family's just huskies, because that I'm not using anything. So don't get that wrong. I'll get beat up again on Facebook here and Instagram and everything else. They're my family. The reason if I really wanted a full out sled dog team again, I would go to a myriad of breeds like they do for sled dogs now. But I just in love with the husky, that whole personality, that whole dynamic between the humans and the huskies and the huskies and the huskies between themselves. I just love it. So that's why I'm a husky guy, I should say figuratively speaking. But actually the huskies are just I love them. And with all their quirkiness, they're the best thing ever to me. So that's why I've got huskies and I do what I do. And this is breed specific to them, but there are other sled dogs that would be a lot better. But you can see the dog on the right, that's Nikita. She's more engaged. She's just a spunky girl. Part of this happens because you'll get huskies that are a little more mellow when they're spayed or neutered. And the two here that are not neutered, and I don't know if my video stopped there, but I want to replay it. I'm sorry. The two that are not spayed, are Nikita and Cyan, and they're the most engaging dogs. The two that are spayed are a little bit more not as motivated, for lack of a better description. And again, that's probably because they're spayed. I've had talks with veterinarians about this, and you'll see a lot of times, not always, that dogs will settle down some when they've been altered, fixed, etc. And then you got to worry about other health issues like gaining weight and just that some people love it, that calmer demeanor. I love some of them being calm, some of them being rowdy, because it's a challenge to work them all together as I do. And that's what makes what I do, dog motorsports, wolf driving, so valuable to so many out there, because a lot of people will have similar issues and all their dogs could be fixed, and it still could be a disparity between being overly hyper energetic and between just being couch potato like I can be sometimes. So I've had many dogs at both ends of the spectrum, and it's really a challenge and really interesting to see those dynamics play out and to work with them to give them all the best lifestyle possible. So that's it, pretty much what I wanted to touch on some of those topics. Now, we're decked out. Again, this was last week, and we're getting into the holiday season. So I always try to have some fun with the decorations on the electric dog sleds on wheels I use. And the dogs are also, because we're on a roadway, in high visibility vests. So the high visibility vest helps them, as you can imagine, be seen, because this is also hunting season in a lot of the areas where we go. And a lot of these areas, they don't allow hunting. We're on trails a lot, but still being more visible, and that's why I'm in the bright yellow, is just a safer way to be. I wanted to mention that this road also is, I don't know if it's right inside, there's a Gambrel, I believe, state park right there. So that's another reason this road should be people should be cautious when they're in their vehicles, because there's a lot of people accessing the state park that's right outside of there. Actually, we continued on, because when we were done the 1.8 miles, because we did a lot of adventuring last week, I thought the Huskies, I thought they'd be pretty tired, and they got done the 1.8 miles and they wanted to keep going. So right across the street, we had to go down the street a little bit, actually, about a half a mile. There's the state park. And I don't know if we were inside or outside at this particular Coxey Brown Road, but we were real close. So we got right into the state park, and I was able to take them what you could consider the downside of the climb we just did. And they were hauling. I mean, we did around 5 miles that day, and we had just done, that was on Wednesday, and on Monday, I think we did 14 miles. So, I mean, these dogs, in the right condition, sled dogs go 50 to 100 miles a day. But with what we're doing and how they're tethered and the lay of the land and everything, my crew, 25 or 30 miles they could do depending on those conditions. So it's just interesting to see how they react and different aspects going on. So I'm going to try to take a couple questions here so we can, I rambled on there for a little while, but hopefully you found that interesting. Rod, do we have any questions? Okay. So my producer has told me, I put my glasses on. Again, I talked about my age, and we're going to see what everyone has to say. So Cap'n Crunch. I'm maybe saying that wrong, but I get your point there. Thanks for the comments. So Captain Crunch says, I've got 2 Doberman and 5 Jack Russells. Will they pull me around if I steal a shopping cart? So very good fun there. So all good breeds. And a lot of people, how many Pomeranians will it take to pull me down? The thing is, we laugh about that, but all dogs love some sort of exercise, and it's good for their health. So sometimes, dogs will reflect their owners, and I'm a couch potato sometimes. If our dog's picking up a little weight and laying around the sofa, hitting the remote a little bit too much, it's a good idea to try to exercise. And it really, really can benefit, not again, just physically, because almost any exercise we do with our dogs is also, I should say any exercise outside, has a dimensional benefit to it. And what I mean by that is it's psychological enrichment, because when you get them outside and they're running, they're picking up on the scents of animals around them. They're feeling the nature. And so that's appealing to their instincts of hunting, of their prey-driven nature, etc. So that becomes dimensional, where we'll go to the gym, or if they're on the treadmill, it's not so much that psychological enrichment, because the treadmill's probably inside and they're just where they live, so they smell the same scents. It's only a physical aspect, which is important. The physical aspect's important, but psychological enrichment really can help, especially working breeds, because all dogs are smart, but the working breeds are really smart. They need to be challenged. They've been bred for many years with these intentions of doing their job. So whether it's tracking or dog sledding or protection work, whatever the case may be. So they really need to be challenged. But I wanted to mention, as I was saying, all dogs, and we were kidding around about his Jack Russells and Dobes, I guess he mentioned that my Chinese crested. I've had Chinese cresteds, my wife and stepdaughter, for probably, I don't know, better than 20 years now, something like that. They always you would imagine them, they're a toy breed if you're not familiar with them. Some can be, we had one that was like all of 7 pounds. The one we have now is 14 plus pounds, maybe a little bigger because she eats too much. But I trained them to be on, I trained this one at least to be on the electric dog sled on wheels, one of my designs. So if you can imagine a dog this big running on what looks like a scooter or a sled dog rig, she does it. And she does it by herself because, again, they don't have to propel it. And she does it with her husky family. And I've got video of that at alldogmush.com, ALLDOGMUSH.com. So she loved it too. Now, she likes it a little better when her mom was in front of us, and we knew this to motivate her to get her going. And she wanted to see her mom. She was like all out. She was like, I'm faster than these sled dogs. Let me at my mom, my wife. So that is, we kid about smaller dogs doing this, but it's possible with dog motorsports. That is the genius of my design. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I am. But I'm doing it I'm sharing this for the betterment of all dogs. So thanks for the opportunity to answer that, Captain Crunch. Okay, we got any more? So Rumpelstiltskin, your cap is on point. Thank you very much. So yeah, I try to wear different hats, and sometimes I'll wear my helmets just because I can look pretty goofy out there on the trail. It's so funny because I had someone beat me up the other day. It's like a bodily function for a lot of people. They see something and they either want to troll you or they want to tell you how dumb you are, whatever the case may be. But again, I respond to almost anyone because I'm trying to. I shouldn't maybe say this way, but I'm trying to teach some life lessons here that I don't care what you say about me. Sticks and stones can break my bones, and names will never hurt. I don't care what you say about me. I'm here to have a good time and give hopefully all dogs the best lives possible by sharing with everybody on social media what I do, because my dogs are living the best life possible because of what I do and our situation. But so the caps and helmets I wear and everything else, these caps were a series of license plates all across the country. That's what they look like. And I think this one's New Jersey. And I travel the East Coast. We haven't made it out west, but we hope to. So each state Wolf Driver's been through, I was trying to wear those. And New Jersey is probably not as... Pardon me? Oh, this one's Alaska. Oh, so that's even more on point there, folks. Yes, thank you. I thought, the license plates are similar color, and I grabbed the Alaska one today. So Alaska is totally on point. Thank you for mentioning that. Hence your comment. But yeah, that's where they're doing this. In fact, people that see what I'm doing up in Alaska, they comment on some of my reels and some of my posts, and they love it. And they kind of, some of them are laughing because this is not near as intense work as what the sled dogs out there do and what the conditions they run them in. And those dogs just love it. But it's funny because my dogs it's kind of like mushing in a Four Seasons hotel versus camping out on the side of a mountain in sub-zero temperatures and running dogs. So the dogs out there probably like it more doing it, believe me. But I'm not as hardcore, at least not now. So thanks for the comment again. And thanks for the correction of my producer. Okay, do we have any more comments? So Cheryl, great to see you, Cheryl. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your support as always. Cheryl says, good morning. I would love to do what you do. As you say, their age. Very informative in comparison to various situations. Is your son family into Huskies as much? Carry on. Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate that very much. So everybody, my family is almost none of them are, well, I shouldn't say none of them because I've got some nieces and nephew. I've got a couple nephews actually, and a couple nieces that are into dogs. And actually, my one niece just lost, she had a cane corso, big dog, if you know them. And she just lost him probably 6 months ago. And we, they come to me for advice and how to do this, how to do that. But they're not husky people, but they did some similar training she did with her dog of what I do, and that dog had a wonderful life. And then my nephew had a golden doodle. He just lost him, and he's out in California, so I spent a little bit of time out there with him, met his dog, and actually he took me to the coolest dog park I've ever been to. I'm not a big dog park guy because I don't like to mingle my dogs, even though it's good to socialize dogs. I'm just so concerned with interactions because people at dog parks, and I'm not trying to discredit dog parks. I think they can be wonderful in their own way, and they provide a place for people, especially in more urban settings that don't have a lot of land, a real good place for good socialization and to get their dog out there for the psychological and physical enrichment, like I talk about, depending on the breed. Sometimes that's what all they got, and that works. But I'm just concerned about interactions and about sometimes people not taking care of their pet as well, so you can have disease crossover, et cetera. But what I do, because I have a few dogs, I have really the 5 dogs now, they get a lot of socialization with each other. And when we're on the trails, we socialize on a limited basis, but that's how we do it. But this dog park was incredible because this is the kind of dog park I would go to because everybody there has to be vetted essentially before they let you join. Now, there's a cost to it. I think it was $30 a month or something. It wasn't cheap, relatively speaking, but it was worth it. And I went there. Of course, I didn't have my dogs with me. He had his golden doodle. It was just cute as a button. But I mean, there's referees, they call them. They got these pinstripe shirts. And and I saw what was happening. Some of the dogs got a little too obnoxious, if you will. And they started getting in that confrontational position. And these referees came out and they broke it up and nobody got hurt. And it was really cute. And then they give them their own toys or treats or whatever they do to prevent them from going back to that behavior. And they not scold the owner because sometimes it's not the owner's fault. It's just the way the dogs interact. But they give them like a timeout or something. It's pretty funny, but it's actually pretty cool. And I would join a place like that. So my family is really not into exactly what I do. And the person you see with me on videos, all my crew, none of them are family. So Scott, who is the most recent, Scott's been with me for a few years. And he's the guy right there in the black with the cap on, with the hat where the FedEx truck just went by. He's the youngest right now. He's been with me on and off for, I don't know, 3+ years. And it's great to have a younger guy in there, younger and capable, because he's got the strength and the physicality of what we need out on the trails. Old quick story I'll tell you. One of my other pit crew guys, we've been friends for years. His name is Sean, and he was actually in the seat next to me. We did one of these live broadcasts a couple weeks ago, and he said, "Yeah, Bill will say, Wolf Driver will say, yeah, we took on this big black bear in the middle of the forest, and blah 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 blah." He said, I was like, if I'm showing my age here, if you remember the old Mutual Omaha, where they would venture out until Animal Land basically, and they would send their young guy out to make sure everybody's safe and make sure the adventurous confrontations, or they were doing photography, whatever they were doing, are safe. And he'd say, "Oh, you didn't really go out there. Your team went out there. Your crew went." So that's kind of like Scott went out there. And I used to have a guy way back in the day when I first started traveling and doing this stuff, Rhett. And Rhett's unfortunately passed away. He was another young, capable guy. And these guys pretty much, they'll climb the mountain to get a video of me. They'll go ahead and deal with aggressive dogs before I get there. So actually, real quick story there. We had an aggressive dog. A guy was drunk on a trail. So we got lost on this trail. And this was before we had really good satellite communications, et cetera. And we could not catch up with my wingman, who is Chris. Chris has been with me from the beginning too, and he still is. So Crispy, we called him. He's a little fried because he's an electrician, a master electrician. And that feeds perfectly for what I do because of all these electric bikes and everything. He's learned about lithium batteries and engines and all this stuff because of his electrical background. But we could not catch up with him, and we couldn't get any cell signals. Cell service was limited. We didn't have satellite communications. So we wound up being on this trail. It was the Gap Trail, Great Allegheny Passage, way up in Pennsylvania, I believe, this part of it, because it's like a 200-mile trail or something. And we ran into some let's just say, shady people on there. And in the middle of the forest, you wouldn't expect to. So we were a little taken back, Rhett and I, but I was a little younger there. And, we were just a couple guys, but we were a little concerned, put it that way. But it never, luckily, everything went as planned and we didn't have any issues. As we got closer to civilization and we were able to catch up with Crispy, my wingman, in my van to pick us up 30 miles later, we came upon Chris was able to get us on either cell phone or local walkie-talkie and say, hey, there's a guy coming at you. He's got a dog off leash and he looks drunk. He said, I tried to tell him you guys are out there, but he looks drunk. And then again, this is at night. We've got lights and everything. So Rhett, my co-pilot, said, I'm going to go and try to deal with this. You keep going. So when he went, I think it was a pit bull, and the guy's like, I can't control him. I don't know what to do. And he couldn't get a hold of him. So Rhett, who was a really good dog handler, he was a dog lover and could deal with almost any dog. He just, I think he actually I carry lasso leashes or cinch leashes around the dog and was able to distract the dog enough for me to get through. I booked. I mean, again, dog motorsports. Back then, the dogs were running on the side of the bike, and I had a tandem bike, 2-seater. Rhett was in the back seat. At this point, he had gotten off, and I just was able to crank the motor, the throttle, and go super fast. The dogs were all physically fit to do it, and we passed by this pit bull that I don't know if he either used the leash or just his body. He was ready to put himself in front of it because we didn't want any kind of dog fight like that. Pit bulls with other dogs with anything can be a serious issue. So, and this guy drunk, he didn't look like the most responsible owner, if you will. We booked by, and I was able to get to my wingman, Chris, who was waiting in the parking lot for me. And Rhett caught up with me after. He didn't get bit at all. And it was textbook way of handling probably one of the worst situations you could face, unless it was a pack of pit bulls or a pack of dogs. So that went really well. But Scott is none of these guys. A lot of people think Scott's my son, just maybe the way we interact and maybe his age relative to me, but he's not actually. He was in the military, and I think Scott's around 30 years old, but no families with me. I've gotten my mother-in-law when I first started doing this, and she's now 90. Okay, and she was just here for Thanksgiving. I put her in the dog sled on wheels. Actually, it was a Seiko cart, and I stood on the back. It has a rear platform like a musher would do, and she was the passenger. And I had 2 dogs then. My first 2 huskies, Czar, CZAR, not to be confused with Zorro. He was a dog later, but Czar was all white with blue eyes, and Hudson was all white with brown eyes. Put her in the dog cart and took her around my neighborhood, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing in the world. And those dogs were pulling her. It was right around Christmas time, so they were nice and cold, and they were all fired up. So thanks for the great question, Cheryl. I really appreciate it. Sorry I went off on a tangent there. Any more, Rod? Okay, so we've got from Brian Matthew White. Dude, man, that is going to be one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate it. And again, not trying to toot my own horn, but it's creative, and it gives people all these electric dog sleds and this mushing bar. That's the key to it that I've designed. That's the center bar with the candy canes and the U bars that are all different colors because they have pool noodles on them. That's one of the main aspects that I've developed that can adapt to almost all bikes in some capacity. And you see, I can run up to 4 dogs. Now we're working on one where we can put it in the rear, so you have 2 more dogs. A lot of people have asked me, can you adapt this to less dogs? And you can, and I'm going to be showing that soon. A few shelters or rescues or people that do fostering have contacted me. They want to build something similar. I've had a couple people actually build something similar. I don't have a blueprint, schematic, if you will, but I hope to make one so people can be more precise on my dimensions. I'll answer any questions about it. Just I don't do Messenger, and I don't do email, or I don't do messages on any social media platforms because there's just too many there. I keep better track, believe it or not, in the comments section of the social media you're watching me on now. So please feel free to ask me any questions. Some of the parts on there you see are professionally welded. So I had to go, and some of them are aluminum. I try to make almost everything out of aluminum because it's a lightweight metal. No weight is on the dogs whatsoever. But when you start putting extensions on bikes, it starts making them heavier. And because of the way physics works, it gets more leverage, or it loses leverage, and it starts tipping. So without me sitting in it, some of the bikes could actually tip because they have that long, what I call mushing bar out in front. So we used to actually put a weight in the back, because when you put a weight on one side, it counters the weight on the other side, kind of like a scale to try to even it out. But we found out when we use lighter materials, aluminum is one of them. I would even like to go to carbon fiber at some point, titanium. There's other materials, but the aluminum requires a special welding knowledge. And they're hard to find, aluminum welders. I mean, probably every major area you could find them, but we found an old school guy that did it, and he makes me these U-bars. So and I think they cost me each one like $150 or something. Yeah, I think that's what they are. They're not cheap, maybe $200, but once you have it, you have it. The only thing with aluminum, it's not going to break, but because it's such a specialty to work with, we actually had one semi-snap. Dog's tethered in a couple places, so dog's fine, and it didn't hurt anybody. But they claimed there was an imperfection in the material. I think it was just dropped, and they tried to fix it with a kind of a splice weld, and it just didn't take right. So with steel, I've had a couple made out of stainless steel. Again, the problem is the weight of that, but it will work for some of the heavier bikes I have. Those will never break. Aluminum, that's the only problem I ever had with it. They will. The one downfall again about aluminum, because it's a little weaker, sometimes if you bottom out, if you notice the poles are a certain length, so because we're so long, I'll try to explain this the best I can. When you teeter a little bit, if you're going up a small, like a speed bump, the sled on wheels is going to rise, and it can bring the front bar down. The longer that bar is in front, the more down it's going to come, and you don't want that weight on the dogs. There's no weight. We never want any weight on the dogs. So what happens, we figure out the most probable dimension, the most severe kind of hill we're going to get on, and I short hill, again, speed bump size, will have the biggest impact, because if it's a gradual hill, it doesn't matter as much. So when you figure that out, that bar is down low below the dog's belly, because it'll hit that before the weight would come on the dogs. And the weight is not going to necessarily hurt the dogs. It's going to scare them a little bit. But that bar is the genius of the design. Now, if it hits it hard, it could break that aluminum weld that makes that U. And I've never had it come off, but I have had it break the weld a couple times. So I'll see a break in it, and I send it back to the shop and get it re-welded. Steel's less likely to do that. And also avoiding those speed bumps helps the most. So there's a lot of, how can I say it? A lot of physics, a lot of design and engineering. And we're not engineers per se, but our limited knowledge, which is still a lot more than a lot of people with my team, and my knowledge of running dogs, helped figure a lot of this out. So that's how we were able to put it together. The one bar on there is steel, the T-bar. We're going to try to make that out of aluminum at some point and let you know how that works. So sorry again for the long, detailed explanation, but I'm trying to be as thorough as possible. So Bonnie Hot, hey, how are you? So she has 2 Chinese crested, great breed. Yes. Chinese cresteds are just so wonderful. And when I was in my younger years, I should say, I didn't really care for little dogs. They were like cats to me. And I've had cats growing up. But my stepdaughter, like, I want a Chinese crested. I'm like, what the heck is that? And my wife researched it, and she talked to me about it. And they're like, we want to get this. I'm like, okay, whatever you want to do. I'm taking care of the Huskies. You take care of the Chinese crested. Well, Chinese crested comes in a different, they have different variations, just like woolly Huskies or long-haired Huskies. You have smooth Huskies. Sometimes you have in between where the hair, there's few different coats. Chinese cresteds are like that too. There's hairy hairless, which we have, which means that they have hair on the paws and the head area. So it looks like a mini pony, if you will, a real mini pony, like a tiny pony. So it's so cute. And then there's ones that have they're totally covered in hair. And then there's totally bald ones where their hair, everything's bald. So we've had hairy hairless. And I get this hairy hairless, my wife and stepdaughter got her. And I ran the dogs like I don't know how many miles. It was in the winter, and I remember the dog coming up to me, and I'm like, "What's this dog doing?" I'm laying on the sofa, being the couch potato with the remote, just laid back, and I'm like, "What's the dog doing?" And her name was Lulu. I'm like, "Lulu, what are you doing?" And she just comes up And she lays down. She was tiny. She was about 7 pounds. And she just curls up on my neck. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the cutest thing in the world. And her, because she's hairless, essentially, her body is so warm. You can feel the heat from their body. It's like a heating pad on my neck. And I'm like, this kind of feels good, especially after a day out in the cold. And it was just a really cool experience. And that day, from that day on, I fell in love with little dogs. I'm like, this is really cool. And Chinese Cresteds, and it's probably true for a lot of small dogs, though I've never had others. All dogs, she just has so much personalities. And the demeanor for the Chinese Cresteds that I've had has been incredible, and just a great breed. And believe it or not, a lot of Huskies are they're prey driven, they're animal hunters, and they get themselves into a lot of trouble and families with them because they'll kill small animals, sometimes in an instant, because they just pick them up, not trying to be too crude here, pick them up by the neck and shake them and kill them. And it's happened with me in the field with wild animals. Before I can see what's going on, they've got a small animal, possum, whatever, picked it up, shook it, and it's dead. And I'm like, gosh, rabbits, whatever. So you have to be really careful with them around, especially cats. And everybody knows that. But even small dogs, I mean, they can kill small dogs. So we were very concerned when we had we got our Chinese Crested when I think I had my first 2 Huskies somewhere in 97. I had them in 95, but I think we got for Lulu back in 97. I'm just going off the top of my head here. And we were so concerned. Again, being a dog trainer and doing everything I do, I knew what to do. So I approached the situation accordingly, and she was never bothered by any of my Huskies, even ones that I got after her. And it was just a great relationship. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. So I mean, caution is the biggest thing. I mean, we did have one of our Huskies, Hudson. He killed one of our cats because I wasn't home. Stepdaughter let the cat out and grabbed it in a heartbeat because they lived in different areas. But so cats are another story. But we've worked really well with the Chinese Crested, and the one we have now, Gigi, Lulu. Now we got Gigi. She, the dogs are great. My newest Huskies, Cyan and Inyo. Inyo's fine with her, but Cyan is just so much energy. I mean, she got to run 100 miles a day. I mean, I don't do that with her, but that's a dog that could do it. We only concern is with her because she's been around Gigi, always controlled with me when I'm there. And that's the only time she would be around her. But she's fine with her. But it might be, as far as prey drive goes, but it might be a little too much excitement because Gigi's around 9 years old. And just the other night when I was walking into the house with the dogs, Gigi was laying on the couch and Cyan just wanted to pop up because Cyan's like a jumping bean. Just want to pop up and see her on my sofa. And I just called her. I said, Cyan, because she'll get right over top of her to play. But Gigi's like, imagine being the Jolly Green Giant and a little mouse. Like, what's going on here? So it's all in good fun. But even though she's not looking on her as prey, we have to be careful of her energy and her playing desire. Real quickly, with the Chinese Crested, she's a pistol within herself. So I've actually had her with one of my biggest Huskies because he was a Husky Malamute, Zorro. He would go to his crate. I throw bones in their crate, biscuits, before I feed them, want to get them in there, whatever, just to teach them it's a good place, etc. And she would sit there and bark at him to not go in there so she could go in there and get the treat. And then she'd walk out with the treat. And I'd be like, Zorro, he's he was 75, 80 pounds, big head, big body, because he was a Husky Malamute. And he would just, she ruled the roost with him. So it's kind of funny, some of the dynamics. And he's a pushover in that way. But he would take care of his area if the other Huskies got two, because he was their little brother, if you will. He was the youngest. And they would be a little assertive with him. It was a funny dynamic. So thanks so much for the comment, Bonnie Hott. I appreciate that. And any more, Rod? Great. So Oh, so Bonnie Hot again. So your dogs are doing just what they want to do. My friend had 4 Huskies, and they are such a different breed. They aren't happy unless they're running and laying in the cold. And that's so true. Thanks for bringing that up, Bonnie, because so many people out there are like, your dog shouldn't be out in the cold. They don't say it to me, but they say it to other people. And I'm like, try getting the Husky to come inside when it's snowing out or when the temperatures are below 0. They don't want to. My Huskies sleep inside every night, just the way I am. But that doesn't mean they can't be outside. It's really hard sometimes to get them out. And the problem with my Huskies are they are long-haired, as I said, woolly Huskies. So the actual elements outside, they're an anomaly in the wild. You have it occurring less with that long hair than you would a smooth hair dog per se, double-coated dog. The reason I think that happens less in the wild because it's really a little bit detrimental to them because ice and precipitation can freeze on them and then actually chill them. So even just rolling in the snow, I've had it happen. So I've never had the Husky get actually cold, but we've been doing our dog sledding, our electric dog sled on wheels, what I call mushing, electric mushing. And for some reason, I don't know if precipitation was falling or whatever, but I saw Jag, one of my all-white Huskies with blue eyes. He was getting a buildup on his coat of this ice forming. So we got him to the truck, of course, and truck's temperature was comfortable for humans, so it de-thawed off him immediately. It had no effect. But yeah, so some breeds and some conditions, some of the breed and some conditions, so you may have to take that into consideration. But thanks so much. And they are doing what they love to do, and that's what so many people don't understand out there. But that's why I'm doing this. Thanks again, Bonnie. Any more, Rod? Okay. Cheryl, hey, great presentation. Thank you so much as always again, Cheryl. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to you as well, and to everybody out there. I do appreciate it. Keep the comments coming. Keep all the good stuff coming. So I'm going to try to pronounce this. CD Lamb Chops. Hello. Hey, hello to you. And I love it. Just a shout out. Anything you want to say, even if you want to be mean to the wolf driver, I can handle it. But thank you, CD Lamb Chops, for saying hello. And a big shout out. We're at Hanover, Pennsylvania. So, and big shout out to you. Keep them coming, Rod. Any more?
Yeah, we got a comment on Instagram. I don't know if you can see it, but it says, "Could you give me any advice on teaching my 4-year-old Husky how to pull my sled and turn on command?"
Okay, so somebody on Instagram, for some reason that doesn't show up in our multi-view feed, has asked, can I give any advice on teaching their 4-year-old Husky, which is a good age to learn at, to pull on a sled and for commands. So when you have one dog, it's a little harder for some of them to actually learn to pull because they don't want to be in front of you pulling something. Now, some dogs are naturally, a lot of Huskies actually, are going to pull you on a leash. But when you change that to more weight or to a different dynamic, such as being on a sled or on a bike, it becomes a little more challenging sometimes. And I had that with my first Huskies. So what I did was, it's always easier if you have another Husky that does it because you just put them together, or another dog, and they just go. And he learns, oh, this is okay to do. And a lot of times, a lot of people spend a lot of time teaching their dog not to pull. So really important. Always use a harness, of course, for pulling. Now, we do that because it's healthy to the dog, and it spreads the weight out more evenly, and it really gives you access to their full pulling power. If we try to get them to pull by just a collar, God forbid, because you can choke them, you can overstrain the neck, you can develop the wrong muscles, and it becomes a really big problem that can be detrimental to them. So that's the crossover there. So when you have the collar on, they should know, hey, walk with the collar, walk on the leash, don't pull. But when they have the harness on, it's go time. That means, oh, that's my signal from my dad, from my mom, from my family. It's okay to pull now. So the harness is like, I don't know if you ever saw the Stallone Over the Top movie. When he turns his cap around, it's go time. He's ready to arm wrestle. That was all about arm wrestling. And but that's how I equivalate that. I say, when you put the harness on, you go, the dog, it should be a training or an instinctual to them. They should learn that that's when we pull. So if you have someone to work with you to help you train the dog to pull, and what I mean by that is if you're training them on a bike, Usually it's easier to train them on something that's going to roll. The only thing is with the bike, they can get scared of it a little bit, but at least they can feel it. Once they pull, the bike will start rolling, especially if you're going downhill or on level surface. Going uphill, it's harder to teach it because they got to keep engaging. So you just want to get a little bit at a time, goes a long way. So if you can get into the bike, and of course, make sure they can't have any bad experiences. So if you have a bike that is almost a trike or a quad where it can't tip over, or if you feel secure enough with yourself that you're not going to let it tip, because you don't want any loud sounds or sudden movements, or you don't want to be yelling any profanities and the dog thinking, "Oh my God, I did something wrong." You want to keep it as safe as possible, the dog, and just. Of course, it's not going to hurt him. It's behind him usually, but just the sound of it and your body language is going to be bad if something bad happens. And when I say something bad, again, just the bike falling. But the dog's out in front. You tether the dog properly using a harness. If you can't, if you hopefully can have somebody else, a wife, a friend, a better half, whatever, husband, I use hot dogs because it's a highly what I call a high value treat. They sell high value treats, what they call high value treats, maybe like dry livers or whatever, liver pieces, etc. It's just something real small. I cut hot dogs 4 ways and then chop them, and I'll show that sometime. I show it on some of my websites because you can get really small morsels, enough to get the dog excited. But again, you don't want to overfeed the dog, especially while you're doing an activity, and you want to be able to give them enough of them to get them excited. So, but in small quantities. They take the hot dog and they walk with you, and they, as they're pulling you, good boy, good girl, and just stop, give a hot dog, every a little piece, a little morsel, every so often. Then you can have somebody get further down your road, your neighborhood, your driveway, whatever, and then the dog can pull you a little more. So first they're walking on the side, then they're out in front. And then you can further and further that distance. We originally did it with when I have to train a dog, somebody will be on an ATV, on another bicycle, in a car even. And the dog learns real quickly. That car, that ATV, whatever it is, has got my treat on there. I'm going for it. And you're telling them good boy, and they're telling them good boy, good girl, whatever. And they're learning, oh, this is cool. This is okay. And they got the harness on, so they know, don't do this in my collar, do it in the harness. Now, if you don't have anybody to help you, what I did was I actually put on the proper harness, a suitcase, and I loaded it with a weight plate that you would use in a gym, just 5, 10, 15, 25, whatever the size it is. And I put it in there and I zipped it up, and I put my dog on a leash. And you can use a leash too when they're pulling you on the bike if somebody's walking with the dog and you're behind, depending on the motivation of the dog. But I put my dogs on a leash from their harness. So the weight's tied to it and that's tied to it. And I would just walk with them. Good boy, good girl. Every so often, give them that hot dog treat. With hot dogs, of course, you don't want any garlic in there, any onion powder. You want them just straight up hot dogs as much as possible. I know there's a lot of bad stuff in them, but we're not giving them long enough hot dogs. We're just using it for training that it's not going to hurt them. Again, just small morsels. So the weight inside the suitcase really helped me. Excuse me. That really helped me teach my first dogs. And then now that I was just on the side of them, so it still wasn't behind them, but they were learning that pulling this weight, it feels a little awkward on their body at first, but it's okay. Dad's telling me it's okay. And then I was able to move behind them, get further away, etc., and then move in front of them and call them to me with the weight on there. And you got to make sure it's relatively safe. You don't want something totally flying around. Again, that's just for short distance training, but to get the right motion and the right idea in their mind, because once they have that, anything else it becomes second nature for them. And the dogs, a lot of dogs like husky, sled dog breeds, have this instinct in them anyway. So it's really easy. A lot of people ask me, well, how do you train them for the dog sled on wheels, the electric dog sled? The biggest thing is just getting them over the fear. A lot of times I run them on the side. I did in the past, and that wheel aversion, depending on the dog, would be like, what's that next to me, rolling, making noise, and they would be looking at it. But as soon as they get over that and they realize it's not going to hurt them, they're gone. They're just like, yeah. Was there a second part to that question, or that was it, Rod?
No,
Okay.
another comment.
Okay.
Actually, you can see.
Oh, sorry. Got another one. Another comment here. Hope that answered your question. Please feel free to come back at me. Let me know how that worked, or let me know if you still have questions. Always, though, I'll tell you with training, anything, start slow. I had a dog that wouldn't even get next to the bike. They were so scared. So every day, I think 3 times a day I would do this. I'd go out there, take that little morsel of hot dog, put her next to it on a leash, just get her closer and closer each time, and throw hot dogs, put a few hot dogs on the ground or in my hand right at the bike, just to get over that version of being there. And it only took a day or 2, 3 days maybe max. Then put her on the bike just a little bit in my driveway, 3 feet, more hot dogs, more. And then it become more natural. And they're like, oh, this thing's not going to hurt me. Cool, no problem. Next comment. Hope that answered. Sean Condonley. Hey, Sean Condonley. Sean is family. How are you? So good to see you. Sean says, tell my other half hello. Well, I'm going to tell Cynthia you say hello. Thanks so much for dropping by on the live broadcast here. Good to virtually kind of see you. Hope everything's well with you. And I hope to see you on a good occasion in the near future. Thanks for saying hello, Sean.
We got one last question on Instagram.
Okay.
How do you get your dog cart to stop?
Okay.
When you're running the dog?
So questions come to us. How do we get the dog cart to stop? And again, and don't want to toot my own horn, but that's the genius of the design here, that almost all my bikes and rigs are built on some sort of some sort of bike, some sort of professionally, conventionally designed bike. So it's going to naturally have, excuse me, my TikTok was acting up. It's going to naturally have brakes and steering and all that good stuff. To get them to stop, they use the command. Sled dog teams do. Whoa. So that's a common command. Whoa. And whoa isn't stopping on a dime. And that's why a lot of the words that we use to command sled dogs are gee, haw. So you can say it for a while, but different enough when the dogs hear that your voice carry on, they start understanding what it means instead of just saying stop. Ho. So you probably heard that command. So as I put on the brakes or as I stop, I try to do it, especially when training them, as gradually as possible. So whoa, like slow. And I'm using my hand because I taught a lot of this on a Seiko dog cart, which is a cart that they lead. The professional mushers use a lot of times to train lead sled dogs because you can teach them, like you're asking here, how to stop. You can teach them G, which means to the right, haul, which means to the left, and there's a lot of deviations of those, come around, etc. With that Seiko cart, just like the bikes I'm talking about that I've designed and built off of, you can, of course, stop. You can go to the left and go to the right. The design of everything here, the way the dogs are tethered, and including on the Seiko cart, it's in 2 places. So they're going to feel when you stop, and they're going to start learning that dynamic. And as they learn that dynamic and they start associating with a word, it becomes easier for them to understand. And it, again, becomes like second nature. So when they start hearing that, and it's really good to teach them those commands. Even we do off-leash work too, because when they're off-leash, if I say, gee, they know I want them to go to the right. I'm behind them on an ATV and they're out in front of me. Gee, and they just go to the right because maybe the trail splits. And when I say, whoa, that means stop. And when I say stay, which I'm not going to say on the dog cart, that means to stay, obviously. And so that's how we teach them. It's real easy when the bike or vehicle you're using to run the dogs, when, of course, you can stop it. You're not depending on the dogs to stop it, and you're not depending on the dogs to turn it. The mushing bar, you see all the padding on there, all the colors. That actually is because if the dogs want to go in another direction, if they're not listening, that's why I don't need true lead sled dogs, because I have full control. And if they don't listen to my commands or they're distracted, then the cushion on there and also the attachments are spring loaded. So the pressure will be gradual. The impact I'll push them by turning them almost. It gradually pushes them, but minimally. Of course, it's not going to hurt them at all. Just going to push them. And if they know what I'm trying to teach them or they're learning the command, they're like, oh, this means if I go to the right, I'm not touching the bar, so it's easier. Or if I stop, if I slow, instead of just stopping. Sometimes they will just stop to go to the bathroom. That's just what they do. But because of those spring-loaded mechanisms I'm talking about, how they're attached, it still gives some recoil as to not affect them in any way or to be as least impactful as possible. So hope that answers the question. Anything else you got, Rod? Okay. Allison Shaw, happy holidays. Thanks so much, Allison. I really appreciate that. Happy holidays to all. And I think I saw one more in there. Did I see Kathleen in there? Because I wanted to make sure I shout out. I thought I saw Kathleen, maybe not. Yes, Kathleen Johnson Gadsden. I know Kathleen from way back in the day from being on social media. And we've talked about this before. I remember you so poignantly when I was riding, especially Zorro, because he rode so well on my motorcycle. Zorro, again, was the Malamute Husky I had, and he was the largest because he had that Malamute in him. He would be in a specially designed, you have a specially designed motorcycle seat. He would sit in it and he'd put his head on my shoulder, and I had certain goggles for him, and he just loved riding down the road. That was his thing. So that's what I say. I do so many activities with the dogs. People are like, that's cruel, you're making them pull you. Well, again, this is like the luxury of life for them, the way they're cared for, the way they're getting to do what they're instinctually bred to do. And the other activities we do to have fun with too. Well, to have what I consider fun. This is fun for them. So that's how we do it here in Wolf Driver Land. That's it, Rod? Okay, so I'm going to end the broadcast, but if you are seeing this broadcast later, after we're done being live here, please don't be shy to leave a comment, or don't think I'm not going to see it, because I really go back and check everything. And again, I'm more active on comments than I am on any messaging you might do, because just messages are filled with spam. I don't have enough time in the day to deal with that. But I really think. Oh, Kathleen. Okay. So Kathleen, I miss them all. I like her, but beware. Kathleen says she misses them all, and she from the past, because Kathleen's been tuning in so long, she remembers all the old dogs. And I had a generation before them, Kathleen. I don't think you knew them because I don't think I had Facebook Live. But yeah, I know I miss them too. And by the way, you got to see our and it's not out yet. But if you go to dogdocumentary.com, Kathleen, you'll see a lot of the dogs you knew in there, because that's towards the end of, in their senior years, we were making a lot of the documentary, and it'll bring a tear to your eyes. And the hardest part in there is when Jag passed away. We had to put him down, and it's just an emotional scene. But it's a lot of good stuff in there, and a lot of ways of dealing with loss with the dogs, and which is common. You're probably going to outlive your dog, and it's really good. Dogdocumentary.com. We hope to have it out. We're trying to work with some streaming platforms, so you'll be able to actually see the whole 90-minute movie. But Dog Documentary gives you an idea of what's in it, some of the festivals we won, and some of the information. And I think there's a link there to show you all my dogs I've had in previous generations. So I appreciate you tuning in today. Yesterday, we were on the High Bridge Trail, if you saw that. We were in Virginia. I forget what it's called, near Farmville, Virginia. That I do know. The reason we chose there is a really interesting trail. Really great. The surface is great. There's not a lot of people on there. The main attraction is the High Bridge, which is the longest recreational bridge in Virginia and one of the longest in the USA at 2,400 feet long. So a little under a half a mile, but incredible, and it's well maintained. Get some spectacular views. Also, it's a boardwalk type surface, so the dogs love running on it. There's plenty of room on it. People can pass, and you can pass. And it's 125 feet above the Appomattox, I know I'm saying that wrong, river. I butcher every name, from people to places. But so it's a really scenic area. Trail's great. Dogs did great. Yesterday, we did 17 miles. It was awesome. They were in for a long distance run because, as you see again, the video out where the dogs are doing on my ATV type bike, that was the hill climb, that was the muscle building, and I'm offset these exercises with different ones, and that's how I call it Mush Cross Fit. And that's a new website I've created, mushcrossfit.com. I'm Wolf Driver. Hope you enjoyed the show. Look forward to seeing you on the show real soon. We've been doing this 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock hour on Tuesdays. Next week, if everything goes as planned, we'll have my someone here interviewing me, actually. So it should be interesting hearing it from a different perspective. And I'm always open to taking comments, questions, concerns, and all that good stuff. Have a great day, everybody. Thank